Welcome back to the Deliberate Leaders Podcast. I am your host and executive business coach, Allison Dunn. Our topic today is the number one communication mistake IT executives are making. Our guest is Stefanie Krievins. She is the creator of the Change Architecture, which provides a new framework for driving transformation in the 21st century. She is the host of Hot Mess Hotline. Love that name. It's a podcast for ambitious leaders who want to drive impactful change. She and her team work with companies who are growing, innovating, scaling, and digitally transforming, but are stuck in the messy middle of change and are having growing pains. Stefanie, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I love to kick these off with a deliberate conversation. What would be your number one leadership tip for our listeners today?
Oh, number one leadership tip, I would say, and I don't mean for this to sound cliche, but it is unbelievably true. Communicate as authentically as possible, as often as possible. Yes, adapt when necessary, but use the words that you choose, use the way of thinking that works for you. Because when you don't, people perceive you as being disingenuous and then interpret that into a million different squirrely ideas that involve you not working in integrity. So when in doubt, say what you're really thinking and feeling and hearing and experiencing, because that will land on the other side much more effectively than you trying to be something that you're not.
Yeah. That is a fantastic tip. And it takes, you think of communicating authentically would come super natural, but sometimes you have to go like, wow, I just said that and that does not sound authentic. You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
yes,
in
it's
leadership voice consistently on how you think about things so that when you are expressing it, people like get it like, oh, that makes sense for her. You know what I mean? Or him.
yes, yeah. And I think people want to understand what you're thinking and how you're thinking. And that's part of the reason you've been successful is because of how you think about things, how you problem solve, how you articulate, how you work through big challenges. Continue to use that. I love that word that you use, leadership voice. Yeah, being authentic is not easy, for a variety of reasons. I think we've all received painful feedback that has caused us to
Sure.
withdraw a little bit or
Right.
tried to adapt too far,
Yeah.
or we show up into a new working culture and that they don't do things the way you do things, so you try to adapt to that culture, and I've just seen too many times that it creates more tension than solves the problem.
Yeah. So let's kick this conversation off around change. And so, obviously your work is change architecture. And
Yep.
why does everyone think change is so hard? And I have a formula that I work through, but I would love your insights on this.
Oh, yeah. I would love to hear your formula. I have a couple myself. Um, First and foremost, change feels hard because when we are presented with a decision that has been made for us about our job, and usually we're presented with something at more of a strategic level, and our brain goes, oh my gosh, something is changing about your role and something is changing in the organization. Without self-awareness, without self-management, our limbic system takes over. It's the base of our brain. It's the first thing that evolved with us as human beings that told us that in order to stay safe, we have to stay with our tribe in order to hunt and gather and literally physically stay alive and stay safe from the saber-toothed tigers or whatever those things were that were also hunting us humans way back then. That is not what most people's fear is, or like what their danger level is in the 21st century, especially folks listening to this podcast. Don't want to underestimate the folks that live in actual physical danger for other reasons in the modern 21st century. That's not what we're talking about here. In the workplace, we get presented with, hey, our strategy is changing. And so that probably means your role is going to change in the next several years. And our brain goes into fight or flight. And it just goes into, oh my gosh, I'm being separated away from my humans, so I'm going to die. So change feels hard because the very basic level of our humanity kind of takes over. That's why we need self-awareness. And sometimes change is hard because we need attention to learn new systems. We need to ask better questions. We need to problem solve in a new way in order to work in a new way. We need to upskill in order to work in a new way. And so it is hard when we don't have the skills that we need to adapt to the changing situation. And so that's why I'm such a proponent of individual development plans, upskilling, because the God's honest truth is that like what it takes to get there is not exactly what got us here skill level. And so in order to accomplish new results together, we have to learn new skills to do that. And so I think that gap in self-esteem, that gap in confidence usually rears its ugly head pretty quickly. And we all need support getting past that.
Do you think that we're in a time and a place that change is actually becoming easier or more difficult?
Both. How's that for an answer? How's that for a consultant's answer? In some ways, it is easier, and particularly with IT leaders that we work with, the change that is coming at us, we now have multiple decades of experience kind of working in that tech, seeing how it evolves. Almost all of us that are desk workers know how to use Microsoft Office suites and adapt, right? And adapt from there and adapt to the technology. It's also harder because it's coming at us faster. And so it feels like there's a lot of change to adapt all at once. Not true. We get to dictate the pace of change, inside of our organizations, or as a leaders, we should be doing that anyway. But then also as humans in America, we've never had more unhealthy sleeping patterns, working out patterns, nutrition patterns, and that all impacts our ability to pay attention
Mm.
and to give attention and intention to the changes coming at us. When you look at the sleep research, and Ariana Huffington brought this to our attention. If you're coming to work with less than 6 hours of sleep a night, you're clinically drunk. I don't know how you can adapt to change when you're clinically drunk. And
Or
so
you're not open to it.
yes, and you're not open to, yes, when you're resistant to change. I mean, resistance to change comes from such a variety of perspectives. That's a whole 30-minute conversation in and of itself, like why we resist it. And that's why I go to self-management first. It's not the organization's job to bring that awareness to us as leaders. It is our job to understand our relationship with change and then figure out better ways.
Yeah, that's fair. Love, and that's such a helpful, healthy insight. Change can be so hard.
It can feel hard. Yes, it can be, and it can feel hard. Two different things.
Um, we're kind of hitting on like number one communication mistake, and you said, speaking to
Yeah.
your authentic voice.
Yeah.
But most executives think that they're communicating all of the time, and yet
Yes.
they're saying that they're not getting enough communication. So what is not working here?
I love this question so much. I hear the same thing, right? Like, I mean, leaders' number one job is to communicate. And they're like, we've talked about this project 17 times in the past 3 months. What do you mean you don't know what's happening? So I think it points to organizational communication strategies as well as individual leadership communication strategies. Those need to go hand in hand, but they're two separate things. And so, as an individual leader, are you making sure that you're communicating authentically? Are you making sure that you're using every interaction to communicate what is truly top priority? Those are one-on-ones, those are staff meetings, those are, your Slack channels, those are project management meetings. I think folks think that there's not enough communication, yet at the same time, we've never communicated in more bites than ever before because there's so much coming at us. And so I think as an individual leader, finding opportunities bless you.
Thank you.
Don't you love when that happens? Finding opportunities to focus your communication so that folks understand, where things fall in your priority list would be very, very helpful for a leader because leaders are communicating all of the time. Are you communicating in a focused way so people understand what your priorities are and then their priorities? And then when it comes to organizational communication, I advocate for a process I call 777. Actually, it's 7 by 7 by 7. And
Yep.
every major initiative needs to be communicated with 7 messages.
Okay.
So the messages are the results, the process, the people involved, the relationship, what is going to change, what is not going to change. I think I just gave folks 6 right there, right? Like
Yep.
those are our messages. And so for our baby boomers and our older Gen Xers, put all that information in one place because we want to see all of it in one place. And then you break it down by message for our younger Gen Xers, our millennials, our Gen Zers into your 7 channels. So your channels are just your way to distribute the information, right? So your Slack channels, your one-on-one meetings, your staff meetings, your TV board in the break room. If you still got a bulletin board, by God, put it up there. I know my cybersecurity friends rely on that too, equally valid, but you have to communicate it across multiple channels to get people's attention.
Okay.
And then you repeat that 7 times. If it's a major enough initiative, it deserves that kind of attention over an appropriate lifespan of the project, lifespan of the initiative, lifespan of the crisis, whatever that is. But using that structure forces you to repeat it. It's why leaders have to think like marketers. The same premises hold true in marketing because this is what it takes to impact human behavior. Thus, some of the book bags that I have off of Facebook Marketplace or Facebook ads, because I saw the ads a ton of time that compelled me to action, which is buying that book bag. Same is
Apparently,
true
so
in
with
the
me.
workplace. I know, right? I know. I was like, oh, we need some more of this. And so as leaders, creating that organizational structure, strategy, if you will, to communicate creates consistency that people can count on. That consistency creates a sense of certainty that lessens their anxiety because of the uncertainty of change.
Um, love the 7-7 rule. That is fantastic. I'm going to kind of lean on something that I also think about when we think about like technology and innovative initiatives or
Yeah.
digital initiatives.
Yeah.
So I know that a lot of leaders are sick and tired of the freak out that happens after a new
Yes.
initiative is launched.
Yep.
What can they do to get constructive feedback instead?
Oh, yeah. Instead of the emotional
Yes.
feedback and that, yes, oh my gosh, we just went through this with a client last year, and the Slack channel blew up, and to watch the condescension and the frustration and the stress come out, it's heartbreaking. Yes. And it kind of stings because I was the consultant involved and we're hearing all this stuff and they're like questioning my intelligence. And I was like, oh, this is the change curve in action. So, I think one, as leaders, bringing change management self-awareness to your organization can certainly help lessen the impact of that or lessen the freak out that happens. Um, I'm a big fan of working an intentional project management process where you do a project launch with everybody. You're as transparent as you can be about what you do know, what you don't know, what could go right, what could go wrong. Leaders need to exercise pragmatic hope. And basically, what that means is don't be the leader that's like, this is going to go perfect and on budget and on time, and all the most amazing unicorn things are ever going to happen because your people are just sitting there going, man, is she full of malarkey? That is not how any of this is ever going to go. But as leaders, that's what we tend to do. And so instead, communicate with pragmatic hope at the project launch to say, this is some awesome things. These are the problems that we're actually fixing. And so again, it goes back to transparency and authenticity. Don't sugarcoat with the problems that you're trying to solve because people pick up on that as disingenuous. So start the project with a really good project launch, in the project with your people and being transparent with a really good project debrief, right? Like we said we were going to do these 3 things. Here are the 5 things we ended up doing. Here are the other hot messes we ended up uncovering. Here's why it went longer than we thought. And do that periodically throughout the process to create some transparency for what is happening. Most folks don't need full transparency into all of the work, but continue to communicate how that project is unfolding. And then recognize as leaders that the freak out is going to happen. That is the change curve. That is what people do. It's the roller coaster of emotions. They just slide themselves right into that valley of despair or confusion land or depression land, however you want to describe that. And recognize that your job as a leader is to not fix those emotions for them, but to coach them into the next problem solving step. So, as a leader, you must be detached from their emotions. You might need to be detached from your own emotions and help coach them into the next step and invite them into the possibilities of what you're fixing together.
Yeah.
And if they do not want to get themselves on board, invite them to the place where it makes sense for them to make a difference in this world. And that may no longer be on that team.
Yeah.
Because staying and resisting cannot, should not, must not be an option.
Yeah. Stefanie, the master of change architecture.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time today. It has been such a pleasure talking this through. I'm going to put in the show notes ways to get in touch with Stefanie, where you can find her on the World Wide Web and all of those things, and follow
Appreciate it.
her. And I just so appreciate your time with us today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for this conversation and giving me this space and creating this platform. I appreciate it, Ali.
My pleasure.